After selling my house, the one I had lived in for more than 40 years, I felt both relieved and hollow. It wasn't just a house, it was the heartbeat of my entire life. Its walls had heard my laughter, my tears, my husband David's jokes, and the quiet hum of our children growing up. The old oak tree in the backyard still had our initials carved into it, D+M, from when we were young and foolishly certain that life would last forever. But time doesn't ask for permission. It just moves, and you move with it. When David passed away 3 years ago, the house began to feel too big, too quiet. Every corner whispered his absence. Every morning when I made tea, I would pour a second cup without realizing it, and then stare at it until it grew cold. I'd kept everything just as it was, his slippers near the bed, his glasses on the table, because somehow changing anything felt like erasing him. But one day I woke up and realized that memories don't live in things, they live in hearts. And mine was too heavy to carry all that alone. So, after long months of thinking and crying, I made the hardest decision I'd ever made. I sold the house. My children, Mark, my eldest, who was always the responsible one, Lily, my only daughter, practical and kind but a bit distant, and Ryan, my youngest, impulsive and emotional, were all supportive. At least that's what they said. But deep down, I could feel something unspoken in each of them. Maybe it was guilt for not visiting more often, or maybe it was the anticipation of what would come next, the money. The house sold faster than I expected. It was a good neighborhood, and a young couple fell in love with its vintage charm. When I handed over the keys, I smiled, but tears slipped down my cheeks before I could stop them. I drove away with a suitcase, a few old photo albums, and a check that represented my entire life's worth $450,000. For the first time in decades, I didn't know where I was going. I rented a small apartment in the city, something simple and quiet, with enough light for my plants and enough space for my thoughts, but the silence still pressed on me. I missed family dinners, even the ones that ended in arguments. So I called my children and invited them over for dinner the following Sunday. They all came, though not without the usual delays and excuses. Mark arrived first, as punctual as ever, carrying a bottle of wine and a stack of paperwork. "Mom, you really should invest part of the money," he said almost immediately, before even sitting down. "Let me help you with that. I can get you into something stable. Low risk, good returns." Lily came next, wearing her usual calm smile. "Mom, don't worry about all that right now," she said, giving Mark a disapproving look. "You've done enough. You should travel, see the world. You've spent your whole life taking care of everyone else." And then Ryan arrived late as usual, wearing his motorcycle jacket and that reckless grin that reminded me of his father when he was young. "What's all this serious talk? Mom, it's your money. Do whatever makes you happy, or maybe share a little with your favorite son." He laughed, but I could tell he was half serious. We sat around the table, just like old times, except this time the laughter was forced and the air was thick with expectation. The meal was simple roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and the apple pie recipe that David used to love. But none of them seemed to care about the food. Their eyes, even when they tried to hide it, kept drifting to the white envelope on the counter, the one that held the check. After dinner, I decided it was time. I took the envelope and sat down. "I called you all here," I began, my voice trembling slightly, "because I want to talk about what to do with the money from the house." Immediately, the atmosphere changed. Mark leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Lily folded her arms and Ryan tried to act casual, but I noticed how his legs started bouncing under the table. "I know each of you has your own life, your own responsibilities," I continued. "You've all helped me in different ways, so I think it's only fair that we divide this money among you." There was a flicker of surprise on Lily's face, and then she frowned. "Mom, you don't have to do that. You should keep it for yourself." Mark, on the other hand, didn't argue. "If that's what you want, we can handle it smartly," he said, already pulling a pen from his pocket. "We can set up transfers, make sure it's tax efficient." Ryan just smirked. I mean, it's your call, Mom, but I won't say no to a little help. My bike's on its last leg. I smiled faintly, trying to stay calm. I appreciate your honesty. I was thinking of dividing it equally $150, 000 for each of you. There was a pause. Mark nodded. Lily stayed quiet and Ryan grinned. But before I handed anything out, I took a deep breath. There is one thing, though, I said softly. I was thinking of keeping a portion for myself, just a small amount, maybe $50, 000. I want to have something to live on, and maybe buy a small cottage near the lake. It's a place your father and I always dreamed of retiring to. The silence that followed was colder than I expected. Mark's brows furrowed. Mom, that's not practical, he said quickly. A lake cottage, you'll be isolated. You should stay close to us. Or invest that money. You can live off the returns. Lily sighed, shaking her head. Mark's right, Mom. You won't have anyone nearby if something happens. Maybe just rent a small place. Don't waste money on something you can't maintain. Ryan, instead of saying anything, leaned back in his chair and muttered, Wow, we're already dividing the house and now debating her dream. Classic. I felt my throat tighten. It wasn't about the money. It never was. It was about finally doing something for myself, something David and I never got to do. But the way they looked at me, as if I were a child making a foolish mistake, broke something inside. I looked at their faces, my children, the people I had sacrificed everything for, and for the first time I didn't recognize them. I saw strangers, each calculating in their own way. I understand your concerns, I said quietly, folding my hands. But I'm not asking for permission. Ryan chuckled under his breath, and Mark frowned even deeper. Lily's eyes softened a little, but she stayed silent. Before I could say another word, there was a knock at the door. It startled me. It was late, and I wasn't expecting anyone. I rose to answer it, feeling the tension from the room follow me like a shadow. When I opened the door, there stood a man, a stranger in a worn leather jacket, holding a small package in his hands. Mrs. Walker, he asked politely. His voice was calm, familiar somehow. I think this belongs to you. Behind me, my children exchanged curious glances. I looked at the man, confused, as he held out the parcel with a soft smile. And in that moment, before I even took it, I felt the strange shift in the air, a sense that my life was about to change once again. The man's eyes held a warmth that immediately disarmed me. I hesitated before taking the parcel from his hands. It was small, wrapped in brown paper, and tied with a simple string. My name, Margaret Walker, was written in neat, careful handwriting across the front. Yes, that's me, I said, still unsure. But what is this? He smiled faintly, a mix of nostalgia and respect. It's something your husband left with me a long time ago, he said softly. He told me to deliver it to you when the time felt right. I froze. My husband, my voice trembled. You knew David. Yes, the man replied, his tone sincere. I worked with him years ago. My name's Thomas. We met through his construction projects. He used to come by the lake every summer to help with a community home project. Said it was his peace away from the city. I blinked rapidly, trying to absorb his words. Behind me, my children had all stood up, curiosity replacing the earlier tension. Mark came closer, skeptical. Wait, you're saying my father gave you something to deliver. Why didn't we ever hear about you before? Thomas didn't flinch at Mark's suspicion. He simply looked at me. He told me you'd understand when the time came. He wanted you to have it when you made a big decision. For a moment, no one said anything. The only sound was the faint ticking of the wall clock. I slowly opened the parcel, my fingers trembling as I untied the string. Inside was a thick envelope and a small wooden box. The smell of cedar filled the air as I lifted the lid. Inside the box was a key, an old-fashioned bronze key tied to a tag that read, Lakeview Cottage for Maggie when she's ready to live again. My breath caught. I traced the letters with my finger, tears blurring my vision. "Oh, David," I whispered. The room went silent. My children looked between themselves, unsure what to say. Mark's face tightened with confusion. Lily pressed a hand to her mouth and Ryan leaned closer, his earlier smirk gone. I opened the envelope next. Inside were a few pages of handwritten letters. David's handwriting. My heart skipped a beat as I unfolded the first one. "My dearest Maggie, if you're reading this, then you've finally let go of the house. I know how much it meant to you, to us, but love, a home isn't the walls, it's the memories. You've carried them long enough. Now it's time to make new ones. I bought a little cottage by lake, you years ago. Remember that summer you said you wished we could live by the water? I made that wish real. It's in your name, paid for and kept safe. Thomas has been looking after it all this time. When you're ready to stop surviving and start living again, go there. Plant new flowers, paint the porch, and when you watch the sunset over the lake, know that I'm there with you. All my love always, David." By the time I finished reading, I was openly crying. My hands shook as I clutched the letter to my chest. My children stood there, speechless, the earlier talk of money suddenly feeling trivial and shameful. Thomas cleared his throat softly. "He made me promise not to give it to anyone but you. I checked the papers recently. It's still yours, Mrs. Walker. All you have to do is turn the key." I stared at him, still in disbelief. "You've been keeping it all these years." He smiled. "Your husband was a good man. He helped me when I had nothing. This was the least I could do." Before I could say anything else, Ryan stepped forward, his voice unusually quiet. "Mom, you should go." Lily nodded, tears in her eyes. "You should, Mom. Dad wanted this for you." Even Mark, usually so pragmatic, softened. He thought ahead, as always. "Guess he knew what you'd need better than we did." The tension that had once filled the room seemed to dissolve, replaced by a deep, humbling silence. I thanked Thomas with all my heart, and after some more quiet exchanges, he left, leaving behind the letter, the key, and a truth that had changed everything. That night, I didn't sleep much. I sat on the balcony, the city lights flickering below, and reread David's letter over and over. His words felt alive, as though he was sitting beside me again, his hand over mine, his laughter echoing in my memory. I realized then that keeping that $50,000 wasn't just about money. It was about honoring the life we built and the dreams we never got to live. The next morning, I packed a small bag and decided to see the cottage for myself. My children insisted on coming along. It was almost a 3-hour drive to the lake, through winding country roads lined with autumn-colored trees. The further we drove, the more I felt a strange calm settling inside me, as if I was being guided home. When we arrived, I almost didn't believe what I saw. The cottage stood by the water, surrounded by tall pines and wildflowers. The paint had faded a little, but it still had that cozy, welcoming charm David always loved. A small wooden dock stretched out over the lake, where the reflection of the afternoon sun danced on the ripples. I unlocked the door with trembling hands. The hinges creaked as I stepped inside. The scent of cedar and dust greeted me, but beneath it I could smell something else. Something familiar. It smelled like him. The cottage was simple. A small kitchen, a fireplace, a few old pieces of furniture, and pictures of lakes and forests hanging on the walls. But on the mantelpiece sat a photo of David and me, young and smiling, taken on the very day we'd gone boating at Lakeview decades ago. I gasped how. I whispered. Lily smiled softly. He must have planned it all. I touched the photo gently, my heart full. For the first time in years, I didn't feel grief pressing on me. I felt peace. The kids spent the afternoon cleaning and repairing little things around the cottage. Ryan fixed the old dock steps. Lily tended to the overgrown garden, and Mark even built a small shelf near the window for my books. We worked together like we hadn't in years, not for money, not out of obligation, but out of love. When evening came, we sat by the water, watching the sun sink into the lake. The sky turned gold, then pink, then deep purple. It was breathtaking. Dad would have loved this, Ryan said quietly. He does. I whispered, smiling through tears, "He's here." We sat there until the stars appeared, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. In the days that followed, something changed between my children and me. Mark stopped talking about investments and started visiting every weekend just to help with repairs. Lily brought me books and spent evenings cooking with me, just like we used to. Even Ryan started helping out, often bringing fresh flowers for the garden. The money, once a source of tension, no longer mattered. What mattered was what it brought us back to the heart of family, the warmth of memory, and the understanding that love isn't something you divide. It multiplies when you share it. One evening, as I sat on the porch sipping tea, I felt a light breeze brush my cheek. The wind carried the scent of pine and lake water, and for a moment I could swear I heard David's voice whisper, "You made it, Maggie." I smiled, closing my eyes. "Yes, love," I whispered back. "I finally did." The cottage became more than just a home. It became a promise fulfilled, a place where every sunrise reminded me that even after loss, life finds a way to bloom again. And when my children laughed together under that same roof, I knew David had given us more than a house. He had given us a way to heal. Sometimes, late at night, I'd sit on the dock and look up at the stars. I'd think of how one man's love stretched far beyond his lifetime, guiding me back to myself, and I realized something profound. Letting go of the past doesn't mean forgetting it. It means carrying it forward with gratitude instead of grief. That's what David wanted all along. And finally, after so many years of holding on, I learned how to let go. Not to lose, but to live.